welcome to another exciting episode of the Flapcast, where we find out what goes on behind the funny. I am the co-host of the Flapcast. My name is Josh. I'm a comedian and the promotions director here at Flappers Comedy Club and Restaurant. Barbara Holiday will be joining us shortly. Right now, she is picking up cakes. Very important cakes. We've got Chris Santos on sound, providing us with our lovely sound effects. And here with us, of course, is our weekend headliner, who's been on Comedy Central and has a special out called Critical and Thinking. Mr. Ian Harris, welcome.
Wow, big round of applause. Thank you so much, everyone who's here.
Yes, normally we're sitting, for those of you not seeing this because it's a podcast, and if you can see this,
we'll get you tested. We'll get you tested for some sort of crazy.
That's amazing. You should join the Defenders or the Avengers or whatever team you're on. But Barb is not here yet, and she normally sits in the middle. So right now there's just an empty seat, and I don't want anyone who might be seeing this thinking that I'm just have a space bubble issue. Although I do have a space bubble issue. I don't like it when people are close. So in a weird way, I do like this. This isn't going anywhere.
Well, and people could look at it with me with people always with a shaved head. I could be some sort of racist person who's trying to keep away from some, I don't know.
But the glasses, I feel like it makes it's a thoughtful racist.
It's a thoughtful racist, exactly. I actually have a joke in my act about me. Racism for good, right? I mean, sometimes, sure. You the way I see it is what if you were the KKK soup kitchen and you just wanted to provide a nice warm meal and a place to stay for inferior people who couldn't hold down a job properly? That's
it's possible.
It's possible.
Or for only poor white people.
Yeah. How do you react to that guy? You go, hey, that's racist, but thoughtful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your good racism. I don't know.
Right.
Keep up the. I don't know.
Well, it's basically. I feel like that was 90% of America in the 70s. I feel like is that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
You tell us how it all started with you. When was the first time you got on stage? Where was it? When was it? Why was it? Why did you decide to do this to yourself?
It's funny. I actually wanted to do comedy since I was little, little. I used to do impressions, and I did all kinds of stuff since I was 5 years old. Like I would talk that way. I just couldn't. I had a weird thing where people go, does he have his own voice? Like I would talk like other people. I would talk like, as a kid, I would relay football and boxing matches and stuff like that, like football games, boxing matches, to people, and I would do it as Howard Cosell, Muhammad Ali, and I would do the play-by-play, and like my parents would be like, can you just tell us what happened? Do you have to reenact the entire football game with, then Stable drops back for, and they'd be like, what happened? Who won? And then I always wanted to do that, and then I was a huge comedy fan, and from the time I was 18, I used to be able to get into the punchlines in San Francisco where I was from. They were 18 and over clubs, but they didn't do an open mic. So I would call, at the time the punchlines were booked by John Fox, Jeff Wills, and who's now the big guy over at Live Nation. And back then I think he was like the booker or the assistant or something to John Fox and all those people who ran the punchlines. And I tried to get on. I'd call all the time, like every week, and I'd be like, how do I get on? How do I get on? Can I just go up and can I just do a couple minutes? I've been writing since I was a kid. And they'd be like, no, dude, we don't have an open mic. And they used to say, go to the Holy City Zoo, which in San Francisco was an entire club that was about as big as a stage, and it had been around forever. And I think at one point it might have been co-owned by Robin Williams, and I know Tracy Forrester, who was a booker up there, had a stake in it. Will Durst. There was a few people who had been involved with the Holy City Zoo, and it's this iconic place, this little bar and a stage and this kind of little tiny stadium seating and some bar seating, and it was very small, but it was a 21 and over bar. And I'd say, look, I'm 18, I'm 19, I can't get in. And he'd be like, that's not my problem. That's your option. So I kept bugging and kept bugging and kept bugging and kept bugging, and he kept saying the same thing. And finally, on my 21st birthday, I went to the Holy City Zoo and I signed up. and in front of me were all kinds of famous people. Like, I can't even remember the exact lineup, but I remember there were some people that were Bay Area famous. Like at the time, Patton Oswalt wasn't famous, but there he was a feature act, but he was one of these guys that everybody loved and knew was going to be big. Blaine Capatch and Johnny Steele and Wiley Roberts and I think there might have been like a Robin Williams and a Dana Carvey. Like some of these like iconic people, Will Durst, that were just there doing guests, just doing open mic. And I'm like, I'm not going up after them, following them, in front of them. Like, I freaked out, and I didn't go on stage. And then a month later, I moved to Los Angeles because I had a screenplay optioned.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and which didn't end up, nothing ever happened with it. But I moved down here, and I saw a little thing in the paper for Dave McNary, who used to run the Ice House Annex every Sunday.
Right, yep.
And you had to audition in the main room in the middle of the day, just in front of the other people auditioning. And I auditioned, and he gave me a spot. And I remember the spot because some of the people came to me and were like, you've never done this. I'm like, no. They're like, you've never been on stage before. I'm like, no. And they're like, you're lying. And all the other wannabe comics were like, you're lying. And I'm like, no, I've never been on stage. By the way, I was 21 and I looked like I was 12. Like I looked like a little kid. And people were like, "There's no way." So Dave gave me the spot. Closed. I had 15 minutes. My very first time on stage.
So this is first time ever on stage.
Ever. I had done one. In college, I did an improv class, and I had to do my improv show at the end of the year, which was my only time ever being on stage prior to that, which was not stand up.
But this is really the first stand up time. 15 minutes closing.
Closing on the Ice House Annex. Killed. Great. I had a bunch of people there. Luckily, I had some people come down from Santa Cruz. I had friends that I met here. My buddy who I moved down with, his brother was going to USC, so he had all of his like USC friends come out. And there was a comedy class, so they had a pretty good crowd. And there's a couple people that were on the same show as me at the Ice House, and I don't remember if it was my first show or if it was subsequent shows within that first year. But people now, like I remember like Alonzo Bowden, I remember him doing the Ice House Annex, and a lot of people now that you go, I look back and go, oh yeah, he was just starting out too and doing the same thing, A couple people like that. But I remember getting off stage and it was great. It was like this crazy. It was just this nervous energy. I sucked. I still have a videotape of it. Like I have a VHS of it.
Do you remember the first joke?
The first joke was meant to be. My name's Ian. My mom is a Black Irish Jew. My father is an Alabama Southern Baptist, which makes me, I would say, always makes me confused, but it does explain why I get really drunk and I want to lynch myself in the name of Jesus. That was my very first joke.
Okay.
But I stepped on stage and I'd never been on stage, and the first thing I said was, Jesus Christ, can we get another light up here? I'm not blind yet. And the crowd laughed, and I was serious. I like, oh my God, I couldn't see anybody. I freaked out. And majority of the show, the microphone was in my armpit. I had my arms crossed, and the mic was in my armpit because I talked into it. I'm like, hello? Yeah, okay, this is too loud. And people thought it was funny. They thought it was part of the act. They thought I was like this funky, kid. And I said, looking like I'm 12 helped. They thought it was part of the thing. I get off stage, and they go, Ian, Bob Fisher wants to talk to you. Bob Fisher, the owner of the Ice House. I'm like, oh, okay. And he comes up, he goes, hey, yeah, I got a couple people that want to meet you. I said, okay. So I go over, and sitting on a chair is Dom DeLuise. And he's, being Dom DeLuise, just saying how great it was. He was there to see his niece, who was in the Judy Carter class or whoever's comedy class it was. But the funny thing is, until I left and found out later, because he had a leg brace on, and I saw like on the tabloids that he had broken his leg or injured his leg, I thought he was fake, because one of my mom's good friends, who I was introduced down here, who helped me out, ran an impersonation company. And he knew I was a big Mel Brooks fan, so I thought he maybe had sent an impersonator to play a joke on me. So this whole time I'm talking to Dom DeLuise, I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, buddy. And he goes, yeah, here's a number to my manager. Give him a call and set some time up. Maybe we can meet one of these days and whatever. And all this kind. I'm like, okay, sure thing, dude, right. Sure thing.
Yeah.
And then an agent came over and said, hey, here's my card. Wow. How long you been doing it? And his name was Gavin Kern. I remember he had a big office in Beverly Hills. I don't think he's still around. Met with him the next week, and it was just like, oh, this is easy. And somebody came from the Ice House. Hey, we got a cool show. I mean, not the Ice House, the Comedy Store. Oh, there's a show on Tuesday. Dante's show on Tuesday. This is 1992. You want to come and do it? I'm like, yeah, sure. So my second time on stage was 3 minutes, and Dante was the guy who ran it, I believe. Mm-hmm. He and I were the only two white guys in the room. I think that eventually became Fat Tuesday, but at the time they called it something else, something like The Dark Knight or The Blackout or something like that. And it was all black comedy, all black audience, which I had no problem with. But I don't think they wanted to see a 12-year-old white kid named Ian Harris. So when they introduced Ian Harris, I think everyone went, sounds like a white name. And it was just kind of like a... And so my second time on stage, I was supposed to get 3 minutes. And I was in the middle I did 2 minutes. And the dude, I said some joke in my opening bit. I remember stuff was so bad when I think about it now. But I used to say, oh, yeah, I got a girlfriend. I'm in love, blah, blah, blah. I had this thing said about it. And then I'd say, we're going to get married one of these days. You know, if she ever gets out of prison or something like that. Or when she gets out of jail or some kind of thing like that. Exactly. And the dude up front goes like Eddie Murphy joke, like, oh shit, he old lady in jail and shit. And the whole crowd starts laughing, and he stands up, and the thing is tucked into his pants, the tablecloth, and he stands up, and all the drinks come off the table because his tablecloth is tucked into his pants. And I'm up there stunned, not sure what to do, and everyone's looking at him, and I'm up there for 10 seconds with nothing coming out of my mouth, losing my train of thought, thinking, oh, what's the next joke? What's the next joke? And in that 10 seconds, the entire room, you could just hear them go, he's done. And it just became that murmur to where it was like, all of a sudden it went from, I'm killing and he old lady in jail and shit, and the table flips over, to 100, 200 people going, I'm just like up there with this loud murmur. I'm like, good night. And I just walked off stage.
Yes.
Went from high to low like that quick. It was grounded.
Man, that's wow. That's an amazing, that would kill most men, I would say. I think going from there, from being like, you know, casual with Dom DeLuise.
Yes. To
being upstaged by somebody trying and failing to do that tablecloth trick.
Yes, exactly.
That one. Okay, so after that, I mean, I would I always feel like there's a moment in the career of a comedian. I don't want to say it's a big break, but it's a moment where you kind of transition from I'm an open micer, or I'm still starting out, to like what for you? Where was that? Was there a particular definitive time? Like, was it like a TV set, or like maybe a first headlining gig? Well, I mean, I guess a second headlining gig.
Right.
What was that pivotal moment for you?
I think there was probably a couple. I think the first one that set it home, that I'm like, hey, this is actually something, is I'd been down here in LA for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I consider myself a Bay Area comic, but I technically started down here because I chickened out my first time in the Bay Area.
Right.
But I did those Sundays every 2-3 months for Dave McNary for a long time. I was the house MC at this Long Beach comedy club, which became a stripper and blues club that I was the house MC of. I don't know why, again, they wanted a 12-year-old white guy to be the house MC at a all black stripper and blues club, but that was my job for about 6 months. And I was kind of doing open mic and doing the showcases and that sort of stuff for a couple of years, off and on, working a regular job. My girlfriend, then now wife, was in going to school at Long Beach, so I was kind of waiting for her to be done. And around the time that she was graduating, she wanted to go back to the Bay Area and do student teaching. She was a teacher. And I had called up Jeff Wills again, and I said, hey, man, it's a couple years later, I've been doing this. I think I may have sent him a tape or something. And I said, I really want to get work at the Punchline. And he was like, you're not ready for the Punchline. He said, I'll tell you what, though, we booked some one-nighters. Mm-hmm. And there's a one-nighter Sunday night in your hometown, Santa Cruz. I'll let you MC. It's $50. You do that, and then you go to Davis, the place called The Graduate. You MC there, and then there was like 2 or 3 one-nighters in the Bay Area where you get paid. Mm-hmm. Do those. We'll see how it goes. And so I remember the first time going back to my hometown, and it was just the MC, 15 minutes and introducing everybody, but I was professionally paid as a comedian. Mm-hmm. By a company that also books the punchlines, and this sort of stuff. It was at that point, I think it was Bill Graham Presents, maybe. It might still been Fox, I'm not sure. Or Just for Laughs, I think they called it. But at that point, I was like, wow, I'm getting paid to do this. And then I got a bunch of road gigs as an MC, which an MC in a comedy club, Laughs Comedy Club in Tucson or Harvey's in Portland, they pay like $200 a week. Mm-hmm. Wednesday through Sunday back then. Nowadays, those clubs are like Friday and Saturday, if you're lucky. But it was back then, like Laughs Tucson, Wednesday through Sunday. And then you go to Laughs Albuquerque, Wednesday through Sunday. And then you go to Laughs Colorado Springs, Wednesday through Sunday. So I remember right after that, I ended up getting those 3 weeks, Tucson, Albuquerque, Colorado Springs, and then a 4th week in another club in Denver, emceeing for $200 a week. And I remember I had to bring camping equipment for my off nights. And drove around, brought a friend, so I wasn't bored. So my friend Perry went with me, but I remember thinking, wow, I'm getting paid to go across the country and do comedy. I'm good enough to someone looked at a tape of me, and so I think that was a really pivotal moment where I was like, wow, this is cool. And then I ended up moving back to the Bay Area, and really starting my comedy career there. And within a couple years, I went from MC to headlining. Those clubs. I mean, and I headlined your home club. It's always harder. Like still featuring for a long time at the San Francisco Punchline, Sacramento Punchline. Started doing some co-headlining things, but all the road clubs, like all the clubs that I worked from, Portland and Seattle and Denver and Tucson and Phoenix and all around the country, I was headlining by 97, 98. When and I moved back to the Bay Area in 95. So within 2 to 3 years. 4 at the max, I was already headlining these clubs that I would emceeing at. So I think that was kind of another pivotal moment. But and then in 2000, I placed in I was a finalist in a bunch of competitions I did. Like there was one at the University of San Francisco. There was a Laugh Riots, Comedy Central Laugh Riots. And then there was the San Francisco Comedy Competition, which at the time was still really big. I think nowadays it's still cool, but it's not. At one point, it was $100,000. It was a big deal. When I did it in 2000, it was bigger because it was the Millennium one, but it had gotten down. It wasn't as prestigious as it was, but it was still pretty good to get into that. And I was with guys like Daryl Lennox who were just killers. People from the Northwest were like afraid of Daryl Lennox. Like this dude will blow the roof off any place. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, damn, I'm in the same. I gotta be on stage and try to compete with Daryl Lennox. This is crazy. And a lot of really great comics were on that. So doing that, and then in 2000, I got hip pocketed by a pretty good size management company after that, and I think that was the next pivotal moment was, you have to move to LA. Because there's a sketch show that we're doing, and we want you to be on the 2nd season, and we're going to hip pocket you and move to LA, or we can't do anything with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like another one. We're like, oh crap, now it's another level. Now I'm no longer. Now I'm not just road dogging it. Now I got to go to LA and try to make this, and that's a short window, which didn't work out exactly the way I wanted to. But it's.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I've noticed about you that I don't see, it's a shame I don't see a lot of other headliners who are good at. You are a very strong promoter. You're one of the only guys who actually mailed us postcards and posters. I'm serious. How did that? Because I think it's really important to do that.
Right.
And it's one thing. It's something I've got to get better as a comedian. It's a lot of comedians have to get better at that. At what point did you realize that how important it is to promote your gigs? And tell me a little bit about that. What your philosophy is on it.
Well, I think Well, a couple things. First off, I took about 5 years off comedy. I had a daughter in 2005. So somewhere between 2005 and 2006, I don't know the exact date. It was kind of a soft fading out. I had done a lot of, I'm a mouthy guy. I say a lot of, there are people who think I'm the nicest guy in the world, and there are other people who think, oh, that guy's crazy. Like, there was a point from 2000 to 2003 where I could walk into most clubs and they would put me on because the bookers would be like, we got to see what this dude's going to say. He's going to burn some bridge tonight. And I took pride in that. I'm like, this is cool. I've been banned from, which I won't repeat them, but I got banned from 2 major comedy festivals for doing sets about the bullshit politics behind comedy festivals for my showcase to get into the comedy festival. And people going, you're crazy. Why would you do that? I'm like, because it's hilarious. And everyone sees, I'm just pointing out the elephant in the room. They got to appreciate that. Turns out, they don't appreciate that. But so there was points where people would be like, oh, Ian's here. You want to go on stage? You want to go on stage? I'd read emails from network executives on stage, like our email correspondence people. You can't do that. I'm like, it's hilarious. Listen to this double talk. And so I would do kind of crazy shit. And then when I had my daughter, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to go on the road full time. Mm-hmm. I've already burned so many bridges, which hopefully nowadays I'm past that. But at the time, I was like, man, what do I do? I'm doing a lot of voiceover work. I was editing. I was doing production and directing and doing a bunch of other stuff. So I took time off comedy. When I came back to doing comedy full time, or at least when I really wanted to, was 2011. So I'd been off about somewhere between 4 and 6 years. I don't know exactly. I'd done a couple gigs here and there when someone would ask me a fundraiser or whatever, but I wasn't trying to make a living at it. I wasn't showing up and doing open mics. I wasn't going to Flappers or to the Improvs or any of these clubs and doing showcases. I just, if somebody asked me, I'd maybe do it, Mm-hmm. And when I came back, I had this revelation that I'm 40. I'm not going to get a sitcom probably. I might get a show hosting something that if they need a guy who does what I do, I might still get some kind of sketch stuff or some really cool voiceover work and be able to sell tickets as a comedian because, oh, that's the guy from that comedy, from that cartoon or whatever. But I'm like, am I still doing what I was trying to do when I was 20 or 30? Probably not. So I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to do comedy that interests me. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. And I'm a big skeptic, a big science nerd. So I started talking about belief systems and all this politics, racism, all this stuff that you're not supposed to talk about because I find it interesting. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's people walk away going, "Oh shit, that was pretty rough." But I said, I'm just going to get up on stage and talk about what I want to talk about. And within a year, I was like right back to where people were like, "Wow, I haven't heard people talk about that. That's crazy that you're up there. You're going for the jugular. Like that's pretty cool." And so I started doing my own thing again, and I got this opportunity to do the Critical and Thinking special. So I said, well, I need to get some gigs. So I started calling up all the old clubs I worked, and they're like, you're not bringing that to our club. We can't have you 45 minutes talking about the downfall of or why Christianity's bullshit in Arizona. Sorry, we can't have you walk our club. So I started booking my own shows, renting theaters, going to comedy clubs and going that I had relationships with and say, fine, how about give me an off night? How about give me a Sunday? And finding that if I promoted, I'd find atheist groups, skeptic groups, science groups, philosophy groups, go on Meetup, go on Facebook, find these places that would call the newspapers and go, atheist comedian coming to your town and blah, 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 blah. And they would all go, oh, this is interesting. And they would do a feature story on me. Do a feature story, you don't have to pay for advertising. Right? Because that's a giant full-page ad the week before your show. So I started doing all that because I'm like, I need to sell tickets because I just spent $1,000 to rent a theater. I got to sell 100 tickets to make my money back. And I got to bring an opener, and I got to draw all this kind of stuff. So I just started doing that, making my own, and I said I used to edit, and I worked in the business for those time I was off. So I know how to use Photoshop. I was a commercial editor. I did do all these different things. So I started making videos, and I started making cool posters and sending them out and putting them up and doing all this sort of stuff to target my demographic, looking for my demographic and Googling and saying, okay, if I'm going to Madison, Wisconsin, what groups in Madison, Wisconsin are going to be favorable to what I'm looking to do? Right. and just going after and targeting them and sending my stuff. And I found that a lot of times I would send stuff to clubs, theaters, months in advance. I'd email, I'd call, and I'd get out there, and there'd be one poster up in the back room near the. I'm like, I sent you guys 20 4-foot by 6-foot posters, and you put an 11 by 17 black and white copy in the bathroom. And I'm like, so I just had to get really diligent about.
Right.
I'm going to do this because I have to get people here.
Right.
These aren't people that are walking into a comedy club. Now I love it when I do go to a comedy club because I do that and they're really impressed, but also the burden's not completely on me. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make me lax. I still try to promote. I'm not going to go spend $1,000 on radio advertising for a comedy club necessarily if I'm there for the whole week, because that's, they're promoting and I'm not making the door.
Right.
But I'm still going to send posters. I'm still going to find those groups because I want people there. I don't want to walk the audience. Mm-hmm. I don't want to piss everybody off. I want to make people laugh. So I want to let people know this is what I do. Mm-hmm. And of course, when I play mainstream club, when I go to, I'm not going to go up there and do 45 minutes about your religion sucks. I'm not. I'm self-aware enough to know. Okay, when I do these clubs, I have to curb it. But I'm also still going to talk about what I talk about.
Right.
And I find that kind of stuff is real, and sometimes it's edgy. And I think the audience needs to know. And I find that every time I go to a club and they don't put up the stuff, they don't post what I'm about, they don't do the stuff, that's when they have problems. Because they're used to, somebody with coming in and doing, relationship jokes or rednecks or like this jokes and doing something with the puppets, which is fine. I got no problem with that. But if that's what your audience is used to, and all of a sudden here comes a guy who's got a 10-minute intellectual rant that's funny and poignant and all this kind of stuff, and you got to kind of pay attention to it, but I'm also making fun of something that you might believe in, you might be really pissed off. Now, if you saw that and you came, you're going to be like, oh, this is amazing. The only thing that's ever here is redneck puppets, and all of a sudden now you're here. Mm-hmm. And I partly learned that from Bill Maher, who does a lot of religious material and stuff. He always plays red states, and every time I've heard him asked about why he plays the red states, he says because if you got a city with 1 million people, and 900,000 of them are redneck Christian Republicans, that's all the other 100,000 ever hears all the time. Mm-hmm. So when I come to that town, that 100,000 people buy a ticket because it's a different viewpoint. Mm-hmm. I do what I do just, in LA, and they're like, yeah, we get it, dude. Liberal, you're a liberal, whatever.
Right.
Great, we've heard you. So as long as people when I go somewhere know what I'm doing, then they're going to come out for me, hopefully, and sometimes it works out really well, and sometimes it doesn't. But I find that you have to do that, and also you have to build a brand. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what people always say, and it sounds so stupid and corporate and exactly the opposite of what I should technically be about.
Right.
But you have to build a brand. You have to. I mean, I'm reaching to a demographic that's growing to up to 30%, but 5-10 years ago, my demographic was 10-12% of the U.S. population, bigger other places. But that 10 to 12%, that's 30 million people.
Right.
So it seems like a small number. It's a very targeted number. But if that 30 million people are huge fans of me, that's a big audience. And as that grows, that's a bigger audience.
And by the demographic, you're talking about atheists, or
or I would just say, I mean, it's not just atheists, but people who consider themselves skeptics, or a lot of them fall into that atheist. People who are at least open to the criticism of ideas.
Gotcha.
And I think that, a lot of those people end up being atheists, but I have a lot of people that aren't atheists, that are Christians, that are fans of mine, because they're these liberal type Christians that go, yeah, there's a lot of BS going around here. And then I also don't just talk about religion. I'll talk about chemtrails. I'll talk about alternative medicine. I talk about stuff that me as a liberal, I'm supposed to believe in that I don't. Mm-hmm. I talk about anything that's not scientifically backed by evidence and people believe it. That cracks me up. Like, it cracks me up when I say, really, you believe that? You believe that the person can see the future. Okay, that's okay. All right. Like, I find that hilarious. And that's what all of my comedy comes from. Like, there are people who believe in Bigfoot and just pointing out the insanity of that. Or there are people that believe that the UFOs built the pyramids. Really?
Right.
The insanity of the fact that they would learn how to traverse the universe to come across galaxies the speed of light to teach us how to stack rocks to store dead people? That's insanity. But that's the basis of what your belief is when you think, well, those aliens must have built those.
But to play devil's advocate, we have to assume that there are dumb aliens out there.
Right. Yes.
I always wonder if maybe they came here because they were filming something and they needed a crew.
Right.
And the pyramids was just part of a set, and they're like, well, we'll get these idiots to build it. What do they know?
Well, and all the Jews in the desert, all the Jews in the desert over there, we know they're good in the film industry.
Yes.
So they were like,
exactly.
But it is funny though. I actually have this bit about that, and then the second part of it was, well, how do we know the aliens aren't just morons? And I wrote this whole bit, and I loved it. And then I heard and realized I had heard it in the past that Bill Hicks has a bit about redneck aliens. My bit was totally different, but I'm like, man, there's no way I'm not going to get heat for this joke. So I dropped the second half of the joke because I just, even though, again, I wasn't inspired by him. It was a completely different chain of events. It had to do with my bit.
Well, it's that parallel thinking. It's,
right.
I mean, it's the part of that joke structure that is involved, that is basically logic and mathematics, where you take a supposition and you go to its inevitable conclusion.
Right.
People are gonna,
yes.
you're gonna climb to the top of the same mountain as everyone else.
Right.
So.
And if it was, if I found out later on that it was a Larry the Cable Guy joke, I probably wouldn't have a problem with it because people are going to be like, well, Ian's not probably a huge fan of Larry the Cable Guy. But anyone's going to go, there's no way Ian doesn't know a Bill Hicks bit.
Right.
Which may be the case, may not be the case. In this case, it wasn't until I heard it that I went, oh, yeah, I guess he did do that bit. But yeah, the bottom line is if I'm going to be accused of stealing from somebody, it would probably be like a George Carlin or a Bill Hicks type. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I don't even want to go down that road, even though I felt it was totally different. I felt it's the wrong road to even go down. So I dropped it. But I think that is, like you even brought, it's the logical conclusion.
Right.
Maybe they accidentally stumbled upon space travel, and they're just morons from Planet Trump, and they just,
yeah, I know.
And they got some intergalactic, souped up ranchero that they're coming, I mean, who knows? They could be complete fucking morons, and
because if assuming we don't destroy ourselves, which is a big if,
right?
Yes. And we go out into space, we're going to be those morons. We're going to find. We're going to the things we're going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
To those poor bastards.
We will be touching some buttholes.
To those
we will be probing.
Those poor piggies.
Yeah, exactly.
For those of you out there who are a fan of the Ender's Game sequel,
yes.
which they made into a comic book. I don't know. Okay, that's getting really nerdy. Sorry, sometimes I have to rein it in.
Yeah, you and me both.
Problem I've noticed is that I am a neurotic Jewish man.
Right.
And it's like, I don't want to try to emulate neurotic Jewish comedians, but I just am that.
Right.
So I just, that's what bothers me. Like, I want to be different. I just,
right.
I like lox and bagel too.
Well, the good thing is you haven't pulled the thought out of your head with your fingers yet, which is something, I don't know, but it's like Woody Allen does it, and so does Richard Lewis, and it's like this.
No, I don't do that. I wave the thought out kind of like that.
I push the thought out.
Right.
I don't pull the thought out.
I don't pull the thought. Correct. Yeah, exactly. I don't do the Richard Lewis thing, or I rub my face. I don't know where that comes from. That's a little Woody. Did he rub his face?
Yeah, so does Richard Lewis.
Yeah.
Oh, the thing.
Right. Is there a let's see. Is there a when you're starting out and you're writing new stuff, can you take us through how you came up with a particular bit that you're working on right now or that you have right now? Can you kind of take us through from the beginning to the end of where did you get the idea for the bit, how did you sculpt it, and then where is it at now? Does that?
Yeah, okay. Like a bit that I'm working on for the new special that I like to do bits because my whole act is skepticism. Mm-hmm. So I try to do this new special I'm trying to do is far more mainstream in the sense that I'm not just talking about religion and Bigfoot and aliens. I'm also talking about things that we that we do every day, or things that we say every day, and how to apply logic and skepticism and critical thinking to those things to go, well, let's poke a hole in that and see, which is all kind of what all comedy is poking holes in things or looking at things differently. But I try to take it to that other level of, let's make an analogy of it. Let's rework it. Let's talk about it. Let's point out the inconsistencies. But I still also, because I have this base of people that consider themselves skeptics and atheists and science-minded people, I also like to make sure that I stick to some of those classic topics. I will talk about the anti-vaccine crowd. I will talk about the gluten thing. I'll talk about them from a scientific perspective. That's what I always try to look at, the science of it, which can be very boring, and I have to try to craft it to where I'm exaggerating it and making it silly while making actual valid points. And sometimes it's like I have an idea, like, oh, I really want to talk about this, but I don't know how to make it funny. And a good one is, I've thought for years this whole chemtrail thing kills me. And I'm like, that people are buying chemtrails, like, you think about it, the contrails from jet engines have existed since jet engines, actually since airplanes. We know what they are. We can test them. It's a contrail. It is a condensation. It's water vapor, and just the facts behind it, that even if it was some poison, it's at 35,000 feet at parts per trillion. It could not get into the groundwater in any sense at all. And if it did, we're all drinking the groundwater, including the people who are poisoning us for whatever your mind control experiment is or whatever.
No, because they're safe inside the pyramid.
Oh, that's true. Yes, exactly. And I think, so I find just that hilarious. Like, okay, but I'm like, well, how do I get there? And I was driving a while back, and I behind an SUV, like a full-sized suburban, like 5 layers of seats, giant tires, and it said chemtrails kill. And I'm like, you're driving an 18-passenger, 4-gallon to the mile urban assault vehicle on a road with millions of other cars, worried about water vapor at 35,000 feet, right? Like, and then that spawned the joke. So then I can throw into some of the science. And let's be clear what this is. It's water vapor. It's 35,000 feet. Blah 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 blah. And then I always from that point, I'm like, then where do I take it? Well, no matter what I say. Now I go into the little acting out part. No matter what I say, there's always going to be some dude, one of my friends, who's going to hacky sack his way up to me to explain to me how the government is trying to control us through this mind control thing, and and then. So to me, it's, well, really the government is this elaborate. The government can't even deliver my neighbor's mail to me on time, right? Like the government that can let Flip, Michigan's water have so much lead in it that Superman couldn't see through a glass of it. That government allows that to happen, but they've created this elaborate scheme for mind control where they're putting it into the jet fuel, and all the world's airlines employees are shutting up about it just because, so that they can poison us. I mean, it just. And then I build on that, and my goal is to build on that. And of course, I discredit the guy by making him a moron, and it's I kind of do everything almost like a court case where it's like, let me get this straight. You're telling me that the evidence is this. Okay, so for me, like, all my jokes kind of have that same crazy claim. Let's look at the evidence, because one of the phrases that I kick off my show with is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So here's an extraordinary claim. Is the evidence extraordinary, or is it just extraordinary evidence? Like, that's, and to me, I'm always building a case. I'm always building a case with characters and other examples and analogies and facts and logic. So I'm trying to build a case and at the same time make it funny,
Right.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know that everyone does that comedy that same way, but that's for sure.
Well, it's creating an argument,
yeah.
Basically. It's and arguing. I think Seinfeld at one point described it as you make an absurd claim and then carry it to its most logical conclusion. But
Right.
it sounds like what you're doing is you're taking other people's ridiculous claims
Right.
and going, well, okay, let's play this out.
Right. And
And-
then breaking them down as I go.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of my favorite bits that I do now is I do a bit about my friend said that his girlfriend got pregnant accidentally. And then, throughout the joke, I'm breaking him down to figure out, oh, well, what was the accident part? And it turns out they had sex. Okay, that sounds exactly the way my wife and I intended to have a baby. Like that, and where's the accident, So then I like to take it into, and then I have the guy accidentally bake bread. Or he accidentally bakes a cake. And it gets so absurd. But
Right.
it's like, it's the same thing. You penis plus vagina equals baby. So there's no accident if that's what you're doing. If you mix up a cake and put it in the oven and set it for 400 degrees and expect not a cake to come out, you're a moron.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and
There was no banana peel involved with this pregnancy.
yeah, exactly. Which is funny. That's actually that's actually my joke. Is that would be an accidental pregnancy if you were masturbating on the sidewalk and whatever, and these series of events happened and she landed on you right at the exact moment. Oh my God, what an accident!
Yep.
But but I had sex and didn't pull out. That's actually the exact opposite of an accidental pregnancy. That's as purposeful as a pregnancy as I could possibly imagine.
In fact, highly accurate, actually.
Yes, exactly. You did the one thing that could actually guarantee to get you pregnant, and you called it. There's only one thing that we know will get you pregnant, and that was what you did.
Or the aliens come down and inseminate you artificially in the pyramid.
But that goes without. That's I don't even need to say that.
That's
right?
common sense.
Common sense. Yeah, exactly.
So, Ian, of course, you are headlining at our club in Claremont this Friday and Saturday, the 23rd and the 24th. Yes. Friday, 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. Saturdays.
Ooh, I thought it was a boo at first. I was like, hey.
Saturday, 7 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. shows. Other than that, though, any upcoming things to promote? You mentioned the special. Is there a date?
Yeah, I'm taping. I'm taping October 16th.
Okay.
In Santa Cruz, California, at the Rio Theater. If anybody's up there, I'm taping it actually in conjunction with the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival. It's the final night of. I wanted to tape it anyway, during that time, during the fall, and found out the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival was going on in October. So contacted them, and we worked it out to where I'm the final show of the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival will be Sunday at 6:30, and I'll be taping it. At the Rio Theater. So, and then hopefully after that it'll go, Netflix, Stars, or Amazon. I'm hoping Netflix. I just directed a special for a fellow comedian that we just sold to Netflix.
Oh, great. Who was it?
Dwayne Perkins.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
So I've directed 3 or 4 specials for other comedians.
He's going to be. I think he's coming.
So
first
funny.
Wednesday in October, actually.
Guy's so funny, by the way. If you guys, go see Dwayne Perkins, and if not, and watch his special on Netflix. It's called Take Note. But so hopefully from that we have a good enough relationship to, and they liked my last one, but the distributor and them didn't work out a deal. So this one I might not go to a distributor. I might go directly, and if Netflix likes it, I think that's where I'm shooting for, and that's where I've had the conversations. But I've got other people that I'm interested in that we've been talking to as well. So it will end up hopefully early 2017. It will definitely be available. It's called Extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. So Ian. We also want to do a little another coming attraction. There's another show coming up called Songs in the Key of Funny. And it features an act called the Boubet Sisters, and I just wanted to can we play a little bit of them?
Welcome to the Boubet Flapper Show. We can make you happy from your head down to your toes. We like to wear long lashes, fake hair, and sexy clothes. Not to be confused with a whorehouse down the road.
Very nice. That's the Boubet. I thought that'd be a good contrast with our conversation.
Yes.
But they're also hilariously funny, and they are going to be in Songs in the Key of Funny.
Nice.
Which will be the first Monday in October, right here in the main room here at Flappers Comedy Club and Restaurant. Ian,
check that out.
Yeah, you should check that out, definitely. There will be a lot of Boubet, and it's Boobe, but there's a little thing. What's the thing above the E? The boobay.
Yeah, the thing.
The thing.
The E thing.
The E thing.
Yes.
The accent? Accent.
The hyphen?
Hyphen. No, that's not a hyphen.
It's called something.
Damn it,
actually has
Chris.
a name.
I thought I could rely on you.
It's not an umlaut. That's over
No, it's not an umlaut. No.
Umlaut, yes, whatever. What the hell? Umlaut, is that what it's called?
Umlaut.
The two dots over
the two
the
dots. The
over the
umlaut.
O.
Right.
It's
Nobody knows this? Anyone? Ugh, Jesus. All right. Well, Ian, thank you so much for being here and taking part. Please come
Thanks
see
for having
Ian.
me.
Yeah, you.
yeah, Friday and Saturday,
yes,
guys.
Friday
this
and
weekend,
Saturday. You're gonna
Claremont.
come see Ian Harris.
Please.
And then Friday and Saturday in Burbank, we have the incomparable Taylor Tomlinson from
Nice.
Last Comic Standing. She will be headlining. Of course, Jeff Garland will be here this Sunday in Burbank at 7 p.m. And Andy Dick will be here at 9 p.m. in a show called You Never Know with Andy Dick.
And that is
Cri-
accurate.
Yes, indeed. Download the Flap app for special upcoming events and discounts. And Chris, you know what? This is normally our play out music. Can we do the play out music with the Boubet sisters? That might be appropriate. He's getting it. That's good. I always like to end on an awkward note when I'm hosting.
Yeah,
I find
awkward
that's useful.
silence.
Yes.
And
He's going to play that in a second. So I'm
I
throwing.
actually just closed it down from Windows Media, so I have to go into the Flappers Master, and then after going to the Flappers Master, find that file.
I
After-
don't need your life story, Chris.
I
I'll
just-
sing it for you. Sorry.
Boubet, Boubet, Boubet,
That's all I
Boubet.
know. That's all I know.
Good.
But you're one of the Boubet sisters, yes?
The lead.
You are. I could tell.
Yes. But we've got Ian Harris, we've got Taylor Tomlinson, and then coming up in October, also middle of October, we have Pauly Shore. Only comes around once a year.
All right, Pauly.
Yes, indeed. The Weasel is back in Burbank. Long trip from Encino. Encino man,
Hey,
get it?
Huh?
Ah.
Well, he had to get out of the Biodome first. Was that him?
Oh, and be someone's son-in-law. There we go.
There you go.
And those are the only movies Let's see, what else? He did something else. I feel like, what else did he do?
He did do something else, but in the son-in-law vein, I believe, but I can't
Right.
think of what it was.
Right. And then now he's producing his own stuff actually, which he's getting kind of his most recent one was very actually personal and kind of dark. Kind of interesting. So, yes,
I did
indeed.
not see that.
Yes, it was Pauly Shore Stands Alone. That's what it was. Yes, Pauly Shore Stands Alone, and always a pleasure to see Pauly Shore and Brad Williams coming up in November, Jay Moore coming up in December.
Nice.
Yes, and boy, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. How are we doing, Chris? This is the longest I've ever taken to exit a show. And it's totally my fault. This is what happens when we don't pre-plan.
Scene.
Good. This is like that post-coital awkwardness.
Yes.
Where we've just finished, but now we've got to deal with the consequences.
The accidental pregnancy.
There we go. We're just going to end it with that music. That's fine. Good. Ian Harris this Friday and Saturday. Taylor Tomlinson in Burbank this Friday and Saturday. Jeff Garland on Sunday. Andy Dick on Sunday. This has been Ian Harris. I have been Joshua Snyder. That has been Christopher Santos. And this has been the Flapcast.